Hello, BookTube. This is Weekly Reads. My reading week was largely okay, though there were a few disappointments. This reading week runs from last Thursday, November 20th, through today, November 28th. I started this reading week with a reread of Frank Sonnets by Diane Seuss. This is a collection that is deeply personal, deeply visceral, and many of the poems are about the struggles of being a working poet, as well as the death of a dear friend from AIDS, and the lingering guilt that the poet she didn't do right by this friend at the end. And also her fractious relationship with her son, who has spent years or decades struggling with addiction. I enjoyed this reread, but I didn't love it over the course of Thursday and Friday. On Saturday, I read 2 volumes of poetry. First, Joy and Service on Rue Tagore by Paul Muldoon. This is a collection that the common theme, the common subject is work in a very elusive and difficult style. And to be honest, I didn't particularly care for this collection all that much. I wasn't impressed with Muldoon's poetry. I also reread The Ruined Elegance by Fiona Sze-Lorraine. This collection is a bit, there isn't a common subject. There were recurring subjects, but no organizing subject that really jumped out at me. But I did enjoy this reread. This is, of the 2 collections by Fiona Sze-Lorraine that I have, this is the one that I like the most. There are quite a few good poems in there. On Sunday, I read New and Selected Poems by Marie Howe. The new poems are at the front of the book, and the selected section is after that in chronological order. I rather enjoyed the new poems and really enjoyed the second collection selection, What the Living Do. I wasn't as fond of the first collection selection, or really the third or fourth collection selections. But I did enjoy this collection overall. And I really do want What the Living Do. So that is definitely a collection I will be looking out for. I also on Sunday reread Beforelight by Matthew Gellman. This is his debut if you discount his chapbook. I'm not entirely sure how chapbooks count for debuts. This collection is largely about childhood and adolescence in rural Pennsylvania and feeling like an outsider because the poet is gay. I really enjoyed this collection a lot more than the first time I read it. There were a lot of poems that really jumped out at me that I really enjoyed. On Monday, I moved from poetry to fiction, and I started on Seascrapper by Benjamin Wood. Seascrapper is a historical novel set in either the 1950s or 1960s, and is about a young man named Thomas Flett, who, though barely 20 years old, has the feeling of a man twice, maybe 3 times his age, and also starting to suffer from physical ailments that you would associate with somebody much older than barely 20. Thomas works as a shinker, which is, I guess, a more traditional way of shrimping, where the shinker takes a horse and cart with specialized equipment and scrapes the intertidal zone, the stretch of beach that is exposed during low tide, but at high tide is submerged. And during low tide, many shrimp and other things are left exposed on the beach. And a shinker sort of scrapes them up and takes them to be sold. Thomas, so this occupation is dreary, drudging, and soul-crushing. And Thomas inherited it from his grandfather, though Thomas never had a choice in succeeding his grandfather in doing this job. And at 20, Thomas his soul has been killed. He is just going about the motions. Although within him there is a folk singer. He just is too much of a coward to try it out. And it seems like his life will never change unless something happens to him. And that's what this story is about. A stranger comes to Long Ferry, the setting, scouting for a movie. And the beach, he finds the beach striking, and so he hires Thomas to be his guide. And the interaction between these two ignites something in Thomas that changes him as the story ends. So this novel was longlisted for the Booker Prize this year. I subscribe to a number of booktubers who follow book prizes passionately, and their enthusiasm for the book prizes that they follow is infectious. And very often I get caught up in that. There will be a book or two on the long list that might advance that I'm attracted to, and I will seek out and read for myself. Sometimes things work out more or less. It's never that I love the books. It's more they're okay. But sometimes things don't go well. Well, more often than not, things don't go well, and I end up bailing on the book. Although, while I did not enjoy Seascrapper, I did not bail on it. So, I started Seascrapper on Monday and got most of the way through the first part. There are 3 long chapters to Seascrapper. And at the end of my reading on Monday, I really wasn't all that impressed. The book it wasn't really working for me. On Tuesday, I read significantly more of Seascrapper than I had intended. Originally, I was thinking I would read Seascrapper throughout the course of this present work week. But then I'm like, well, no, I could probably get this more in 4 days. So I could finish it off on Thursday. And then we ended up losing power for quite a while on Tuesday. So I read much more of Seascrapper than I intended. I finished the entirety of the first part and the entirety of the second chapter. And I enjoyed Tuesday's reading a lot more than I did on Monday. The one thing I can say for this novel is that the atmospherics are amazing. Wood does an amazing job describing the scene. And I also really enjoyed the interaction between Thomas and Edgar, the American who comes claiming to be a film director. The final sequences of this section, the second chapter, is really powerful and thrilling. And then the final bit is really well done. But there's a weird bit that I'm not entirely sure what Wood was thinking. And especially given that this weird bit is undercut in the third chapter, which I read on Wednesday and really did not enjoy. I think that third chapter really, I don't know if it quite undercuts what went before, but it doesn't really work, I don't think. So ultimately, Seascrapper was a disappointment. So there's that. So yesterday, I read Earthly Conditions by Birhan Keskin, translated from the Turkish by Oyku Tekten. So this is a selected collection of Keskin's poetry. She is not really translated often into English. And I have to admit, I really didn't enjoy this collection. There were a few poems that I liked, but they were okay. And there were some weird bits with the point. I don't know if there's an editorial errors here or if there are some weird things done to some of the poems that, is it a mistake? Is it intentional? Whatever it is, it threw me out at the point. I mean, it threw me out. So that was a disappointment. And finally today, I read or reread The Man with Night Sweats by Thom Gunn. So this is a collection of poems that largely deal with the AIDS crisis. And I enjoyed this reread, although I didn't necessarily love it. Some of the poems didn't really do anything for me, and some of them did a few things for me. So, in the end, it was an okay reading week, just some noted disappointments. So, this coming reading week, tomorrow and Sunday, I will be reading the October new releases of the manga series that I actively follow, and first volumes that I want to try out. So there's 13 of them. I'll do 7 on Saturday and then 6 on Sunday. And I will make a separate video talking about them on Monday. I don't know if this video will be earlier than I usually film or later. My mom does have a doctor's appointment, so we will be gone for much of the day. And then, so Weekly Reads itself will follow whatever I end up reading starting December 1st. As I mentioned in my December reading plans video, I'm going to be focusing on Belle Redemptions. Wish me luck. I think in the course of making that video, I'm probably talking myself out of this reading plan. But I'm going to try to stick with it. And so that'll be on Friday. And then I'll try to do some tag videos the rest of the week. Although, don't be surprised if there is no video on Wednesday either, because my mom has another doctor's appointment this coming week. So anyway, that's all I have for you this week. I will see you next week. So until then, thank you, BookTube. Have a great evening and have a great weekend. And I will hopefully see you on Monday. Until then, thank you and stay safe.